Good morning, everyone. Today we will start with a new chapter, that is chapter number 14, Ecosystem. The topic which we are going to cover in this video is ecosystem, structure and function. So let's start with the topic. What is an ecosystem? Ecosystem is made up of two words, and that two words are eco and system. So it is a basic system where we will see how the living organisms and non-living components interact with each other. A lot of living organisms are present surrounding to us, like small insects, birds, plants. At the same time, many non-living objects are also present, like chairs, tables, air, water, and so many different things. Now, all of them play a very important role in our survival. We not only need the other living organisms, but non-living things for our survival. So, in ecosystem, we will be talking about the living and non-living organisms. So, eco, the word eco, which has been derived from ecology. We have already studied this in last chapter, that ecology is the branch of science that deals with the study of interactions of living and non-living organisms. So, the word eco is related to environment, atmosphere, and in entire environment or atmosphere, we have both living and non-living organisms. So, ecosystem is all interacting living organisms in an area together with the non-living constituents of the environment. Okay, so you can say that ecosystem is equal to living organisms plus non-living components. Because both of them are equally crucial for the sustenance of the life. Another important term is in an area. Now, we limit the organisms of a particular area, and that particular area is termed as an ecosystem. Let us take an example of pond. Pond itself is an ecosystem, which is the small part of entire universe. It is self-sufficient enough that all the living organisms which exist inside the pond, example, fishes, frogs, aquatic plants, and many others get everything inside the pond which they need. They also get food, appropriate environment. So, pond is able to fulfill all the needs of the living organisms for their survival. At the same time, there are a lot of non-living components present inside the pond. Example, soil, water, dissolved oxygen, so pond itself is self-sufficient. It has both the living organisms and the non-living components, and these components are constantly interacting with each other. Do you think that the aquatic organisms can survive without the oxygen? No. They use dissolved oxygen. They need water for their survival. So, they use the water present inside the pond. So, they both are continuously interacting with each other. And that's how the organisms are surviving in the pond. So, pond is an example of an ecosystem. Similarly, there can be many other examples like forest. Forest is a particular area where lot many organisms are present. In forest, there are living organisms, non-living components, and they both interact with each other. So, forest is also an example of an ecosystem. Ocean is also an example of ecosystem. So there are several ecosystems present on the earth, and inside each ecosystem, the living and the non-living components constantly interact with each other. Okay, so ecosystem is the biological community together with its associated non-living components. So ecosystem consists of the biotic components and the abiotic components. Biotic components means the living organisms, and abiotic components means the non-living components. Now let's see the types of ecosystem. Types of ecosystem are based on certain criteria. The first criteria is based on the way an ecosystem was established, and on this basis the ecosystem is categorized into two types. The first type is natural ecosystem. And the second type is artificial ecosystem. Whether the ecosystem is established on its own, that is naturally, or human beings establish that ecosystem. So we will talk about natural and artificial ecosystem. There is another parameter also on the basis of which an ecosystem is categorized again into two different types. Based on this, that is based on where an ecosystem is established, ecosystem is, the first type is terrestrial ecosystem, and the second type is aquatic ecosystem. Now let us talk about the first type of ecosystem, and that is natural ecosystem. It is self-established ecosystem in nature. It came up naturally. Nobody created it. So it is called natural ecosystem. Examples of natural ecosystem are forest, rivers, ponds, oceans, because they are created naturally. In all these ecosystems, they, there are living organisms, some non-living components which are constantly interacting with each other. The second type of ecosystem is the artificial ecosystem. They are created and maintained by humans, so are called artificial or man-made ecosystems. Examples of artificial ecosystems are garden, aquarium, zoo. Zoo is not naturally created. It is made by human beings, and they brought different types of animals and provided the environment suitable for their survival. Similarly, gardens or small lawn is an ecosystem because the different plants, birds, the small insects which are not present, th- which are present there are the living components of an ecosystem, and non-living components could be water, soil, air. So, these are the examples of ecosystems created and maintained by human beings and hence called artificial or man-made ecosystems. Now let us talk about the terrestrial ecosystem. Terrestrial is related to land. So, ecosystems found on land are called terrestrial ecosystems. Examples are forests, desert, grassland. The another type of ecosystem is aquatic ecosystem. Ecosystems which are found in water are called aquatic ecosystems. Aquatic word is associated with aqua. Aqua means water. Examples of aquatic ecosystems are pond, river, ocean, lakes, etc. I hope this much is clear to everyone. Now let us move to the next topic. That is components of ecosystem. Broadly, there are two components of an ecosystem. The first one is the biotic component and the second one is the abiotic component. Bio means life. So, living components are called biotic components. And abiotic means non-biotic. Non-biotic means it doesn't have life. So, the non-living components are called the abiotic components of an ecosystem. In an ecosystem, huge variety of living organisms are found, that is, from tiny insects to huge animals like elephants or rhinoceros. So, biotic components means all the living organisms that are animals, plants, microorganisms, etc. So, everything which has life, they fall under the category of biotic component. These biotic components are further classified based on their food habit, based on their behavior. Example, forest ecosystems. Biotic components are animals, birds, insects. The second type of component of an ecosystem is abiotic component. These are non-living components, as I have already told you. Now, what are the non-living things present in an ecosystem and required by all the living organisms? That are air, water, soil. So, they form the abiotic component of the ecosystem. Once again, example, forest ecosystems, abiotic components are soil, water, air. Do you think without any of this, the living organisms could be able to survive? No. Plants are directly dependent on soil and water. Plants get nutrients from the soil, and nutrients are taken up by the plants from the soil with the help of water. Animals are also directly dependent on water and air. So, abiotic components play an equally crucial role because without them, the biotic components are not going to exist. You think of any other ecosystem, whether natural or artificial, terrestrial or aquatic. There exist certain living components and certain non-living components. So, both components are required for an ecosystem to exist. Now, we will talk about biotic components in little more detail. We will see further classification of biotic components. Living organisms are classified into three groups based on how they derive their food from environment. The first is autotroph, second is heterotroph, and the third is saprotrophs. Autotrophs are also known as producers. Heterotrophs are known as consumers. And saprotrophs are known as decomposers. Producers are organisms which produce their own food, like green plants. Consumers are the organisms which consumes food which is not prepared by them but produced by other organisms. For example, in your house, your mother prepares the food, so she is producer, and all other members consumes it, so they are consumers. So here plants are producers and all other animals are consumers. Decomposers are the organisms which help in decomposition or degradation of organic matter. When plants or animals or any other organism die, the decomposition is taken care by decomposers. Producers are the organisms which prepare their own food independently. Example, green plants, they prepare their food by the process called photosynthesis, where photosynthesis means light. So with the help of light, green plants prepare their own food. They utilize carbon dioxide and water, and in presence of sunlight, they prepare their own food. So the example which we have learned just now about your mother and the other members as the consumers, right? So your mother is actually not the producer. Why? Because mother is preparing food by using the raw materials which we get by plants or other organisms. Okay, so plants are the producers. They prepare their food in the form of glucose, and oxygen is released by the end of the photosynthesis process. It occurs with the help of chlorophyll pigment. Because of its presence, the plants are green in color. The other example of autotroph or the producer is blue-green algae, which is also known as cyanobacteria. Okay. The another type of producers are the chemoautotrophs. Chemoautotrophs are the organisms which produce the organic nutrients using energy obtained from the oxidization of inorganic compounds. These are the examples of autotrophs: cyanobacteria, photosynthetic protists, plants, chemosynthetic bacteria, algae. These are all autotrophs, so you can say they are producers. Now let us talk about heterotrophs. Heterotroph is the word which is being obtained from the two terms hetero, which means others. Okay, so heterotrophs are the organisms which cannot prepare their own food. They depend on others for getting their food. So these organisms depend directly or indirectly on the producers. Directly means the consumers directly consumes the producers. Indirectly means they are not consuming the producers directly, but they are consuming something else which is dependent on producer. Say for the example, cow. Cow feeds on plants. So cows, they are directly dependent on producers. Another example, lion feeds on cow. So lion is indirectly dependent on plants. Why? Because lion eats the cow, which in turn eats the plant. Okay, so lions are indirectly dependent on the producers. So that way, all the consumers are directly or indirectly dependent on producers. Examples of consumers are animals, insects, birds, etc. You can see here. Now, let us see how the consumers are classified. There are different types of heterotrophs like herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, parasites and decomposers. If we talk of herbivores, herbivores are the animals which directly eat the plants. Example, goat, cow, buffalo, horse, etc. They are also called primary consumers. They are also called primary. This is the short form of primary. So they are also called primary consumers. Carnivores are the animals which feed on herbivores. Examples are lion, tiger. They are also called secondary consumers. Further, the carnivores are divided into two, that is, primary carnivores and secondary carnivores. Primary carnivores are the animals which feed on herbivores directly. Example, frog. If we talk of an food chain where grass, is eaten up by grasshopper, and grasshopper in turn is eaten up by frog. Okay, so frog is called primary carnivore because it feeds the herbivores directly. Next, if we talk of secondary carnivores are the animals which feed on primary carnivores. For example, lion, tiger, sharks, wolves, etc. Again, if we take the example of this food chain where grass is eaten up by grasshopper, grasshopper is eaten up by frog, and frog is eaten up by snake. So in this case, frog is called the primary carnivore because it directly eats the herbivore, and snake is called the secondary carnivore because it eats the primary carnivore. Now, omnivores are the animals which eat both the plants and animals. Examples are human beings, cat, rat, monkey, etc. The next type is parasites. Parasites are the organisms that are living on or in another organism and derives food from the same. Example of parasites are cuscuta, tapeworms, etc. The other living organisms from which the parasites derive the food are called host organisms. Parasites derive the food from other organisms, other living organisms, and that other living organisms are called host. Although the parasites live on the host organism, their intention is not to kill the host as they survive on host. I hope you have understood this much. Now decomposers. Decomposers are the, before that, these are the examples, of herbivore, carnivore, decomposers, Decomposers are the organisms which feed on dead bodies of producers and consumers. They are very important because if they were not there, then the dead bodies will keep on accumulating and it will spread pollution. So, there has to be somebody who eats the dead bodies itself so that it cannot cause pollution. They are also called Heterotrophs. Decomposers are also called Heterotrophs. Sepro, where the word sepro means dead and decaying matter. Examples are bacteria, fungi, some scavengers such as cockroaches and vultures. I've already told you they are important because they help in recycling process as it returns chemicals to the primary producers, which in turn can be used up by the plants. I hope this much is clear to everyone. In our next video, we will be studying about aspects of ecosystem. Thank you.